Web aesthetics have been a point of curiosity on the internet as of late, but they've always been around. You may know a few already. These also do exist offline to some degree, but share this one common trait, that they were infecting people's minds through the various avenues of the internet, whether it be through image sharing, UI, or just a general nebulous vibe. So in this video transmission, I want to share with you some of the things I've learned about these three nostalgic web aesthetics while doing what I do best. I'm designing characters today. Frigoro is one of the biggest names in the web aesthetic world, and the most contested. It has revved up a ton of attention in the past year or so. Its clean style, featuring perfect mode lawns, bubbles, and water splashes, reflects the optimism for technology at the turn of the century. Frigoro reflects a great deal of hope on what the advent of consumer electronic devices could bring to society. This utopian style of collage is extremely comforting to look at, and its glossy, skeuomorphic design elements are emblematic of a time where modern technology was really in its youth. I wanted to design this character as someone who came from this idyllic, glossy, blue sky, green grass paradise that I wish I was frolicking in right now. Oh, please take me there. For all these characters, I was starting off with an elongated chibi base with a big giant head. I love drawing these Splatoon-like proportions. I just think they're so much fun. Each of these characters was supposed to be some sort of villain or criminal, and this character had a bit of an edgy backstory relating to some of the contextual suggestions of the aesthetic. Whew. I like the idea of Frigoro as opening up this idyllic paradise world, so I decided that this character was originally from there. They were raised in this alternate plane of reality, with their consciousness existing in a simulation of that glossy, perfect environment. But one day her mind is plucked from the sunshine and chewy green leaves and united with a physical cyborg body, mishmashed with different parts so that she could survive in the outside world, which is this world, but sometime in the future probably. And compared to where she spent the rest of her life, it's just not as nice. The only fragments of her old world exist within her own person, inside this green gem embedded in her chest. She is enraged by being forced into this life-altering event and is convinced that the real world for everyone else is actually the simulation, and that she needs to free people by absorbing them through her staff and digitizing them, trapping them in the final fragments of her paradise, which now exists as data inside her green gem. I had a bit of a struggle trying to make her look villainous. The color palette that I was working with was very much good, but I was hoping that by changing her expression and concealing her mouth, I would make her appear more hostile. But I guess I accidentally just made her be hot. I'll take it. Another thing, when I was working on this piece, another artist pointed out that her pose was very open, which I hadn't considered as a tool for the design of villainous characters, because you'd actually want to be doing the opposite and making their pose closed. Maybe in the future I'll consider the implications of posing rather than just doing what looks cool, which is what I did here. Also, ignore the times where I tried to draw a city background. It looked really goofy because I rendered her with no consideration for a city lighting scenario whatsoever, and the whole thing just looked super awkward. Anyways, now that this design is finished, let's move on to our next web aesthetic. There's no doubt that you'll recognize this if you were on the internet during the 2010s. Internet awesome sauce. This aesthetic can be summed up by cats, rainbows, and destruction. It is heavily inspired by memes, but lays on a pretty heavy slap of irony in the way it remixes visual styles. It is the joy and cuteness of cats paired with the destruction of lasers and fire. To be honest, I kinda lost the second half of the equation when designing this character, instead going full Nyan Cat Burger inspired. Also a bit of Rainbow Dash, which is a little bit on accident, a little bit on purpose. I wanted this character to be an unruly kid. The unspoken theme between all these characters, as I mentioned, is that they're villains or criminals in some way, but honestly this cat kid's worst offense is probably just shoplifting some Hubba Bubba from Kmart and failing their maths test. Like really, that is it. that is the extent of their crimes. I had such a clear idea of the playful and rebellious attitude of the character that I just dove in and started drawing. Retrospectively, if I were to give this character design a second go, and with the knowledge that I already made a cyborg-esque character for Frigoro, I'd want this dude to be inspired by Robot Unicorn Attack, which is actually listed as a piece of internet awesome source media on the aesthetics wiki. I loved playing that game as a kid, but mostly the second one, to be honest. It was an infinite runner platformer, and I remember really clearly when you die, your unicorn's head robot skull would fly up into the face of the player view, and then it would show your score with a star surrounded by rainbows. But I didn't think of any of that while drawing this character, so instead I made them more reminiscent of another infinite runner subconsciously, which was called Nyan Cat Lost in Space. Maybe I just needed to go outside more as a kid. I loved the color palette I landed on for this character. Whenever I make a rainbowish color scheme, I love to experiment with the different ways you can leave out colors to change the vibe of the rainbow. This one was very much an electric slushy rainbow with a lot of lean towards pink and yellow. Anyways, let's move on to our final aesthetic. I'm so excited to introduce this one. But first, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. I love designing characters, but I've been really wanting to learn about different processes so I can pull my knowledge from more sources when I draw. Whenever I drew clothes, I always made it up as I went, which is only going to take me so far if you really think about it. That's why I found this class incredibly helpful. Look at this! Enrique has got every single fold in here. They say that learning to draw is also learning to observe. Learning to draw the types of folds and learning how to identify them in a picture reference was really helpful. Being the largest online community for creatives, Skillshare has a plentiful amount of classes on illustration, digital art, character design, and more, all led by industry professionals of various styles and interests. There are a variety of classes catered to all different skill levels, whether you're looking for something a bit more advanced or something more grounded in the basics. So if you want to give it a sticky beak yourself, run to the description box immediately. Actually no, finish watching the video first. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Now for our final aesthetic. If you've heard of this web aesthetic before this video, I would be surprised, but if you've seen media of this, I'd just nod my head and say, join the club. Our final aesthetic is Silicon Dreams. Originally, the third character was going to be based on the more well-known and popular Weirdcore, but while searching for inspiration, I came across images of this distinct but weirdly familiar style. I'm not a huge fan, but I'm around enough to know about the amazing digital circus, and this whole look reminded me of it so much. Silicon Dreams categorizes the early, almost surreal CGI art of the mid-80s to early 2000s. Gaudy colors and textures, glossy shapes shaded in black, and so many checkerboards. It's an eyesore, but it's also so intriguing. To me, Silicon Dreams is very much a reflection on the unnatural elements of the digital world. Where Frigoro sought to bring nature and technology together through collage, Silicon Dreams simulates a liminal environment which exists on the margins of digital and reality. The visual style is self-aware in how absurd it looks in many cases, creating unrealistic and abstract pairings of objects and settings. I think that this aesthetic was only truly able to be produced while 3D software was in its infancy, because everything that exists being inspired by Silicon Dreams is clearly too polished and doesn't have that eerie disfaithfulness to how light, shadow, color, and texture is actually supposed to look. I wanted this character to look like some creature that steps straight out of one of these renders, with an eerie and unsettling combination of object and human features. I decided to have this character have a mask, with this weird design of fingers curling around it to hold it on. If I had the time to do some more expression drawings, I'd imagine that his hand would clench over his mask and crack it when he was really angry. I thought that a large trench coat would look sufficiently villainous and also very mysterious. This villain's power would be to simplify people into basic 3D shapes, trapping the features of their face onto the flat surfaces of these objects like a low poly Sims 1 render. How terrible. This isn't realised to the very end of the design though, because I add the faces last. He sees through his eyeball that he holds. If he were a video game boss, this would definitely be his weak point. I think that he moves it around with sleight of hand, as if it were one of those Fushigi crystal balls that everyone got lied to about. But the eyeball is sort of like his minion and pet, and it is always by his side. I didn't come up with motivations or a backstory for this character, but if you have any ideas, I'd absolutely love to hear them in the comment section below. Now that we're done with each of these characters, let's take a final look at what we've drawn today with a little bonus look at some sticker sheets I made of these designs. So those are our artworks. Which web aesthetics would you like to see me draw next? I'd love to make a part 2, I had so much fun drawing these. Please let me know down in the comments what aesthetics you'd really like to see next. And if you've made it this far, make sure to subscribe for more art and media related content. And for any people on the planet Earth looking to get their tendrils on some physical items of my art, I'm super excited to remind you that I have a monthly mail club, which is now open to all residents of the Milky Way. Each month I will send you multiple stickers, sticker sheets, prints, and extra goodies. Gifts do vary from month to month, but I always try to be generous, because it's amazing to think that my art is making its way over the entire galaxy. Next month's mail will be based on game consoles, so if that sounds cool and you'd like to support me directly, link is down below. So a huge thank you to my current supporters and to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. This transmission is coming to an end, but there's more to see on my channel. I hope to keep in touch. Zeppy out.